We're going to jump over to the Wheel of Doom, where we pick a topic by spinning a wheel that lands on a random topic, and then we're going to chat about it real quick.
Running
Wheel
out
of
of
Doom,
topics,
baby. We're getting
right?
low on topics, so give us some suggestions.
Wheel of Doom.
Shuffle, 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 and spin. What are we getting tonight? Something with Super Nintendo.
Okay.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Was Super Nintendo better than
Yes.
SEGA Genesis?
The answer is yes. We're
No.
done. That was
No.
Wheel of
The
Doom.
answer is no.
Thanks for joining us.
No.
No, come on.
I was
dude.
just thinking about this the other day,
Were
actually,
you?
and that I really was. I was actually I didn't know that it was on the wheel, and I was going to suggest it. Um, I was a Genesis guy. Like
Okay.
I was a Genesis kid growing up. My neighbor had the Super Nintendo. Um, yeah, I and even playing it over his house, I preferred the Sega Genesis. I don't know why.
Playing the
Like
Super Nintendo over his house, and then you preferred.
no, well, I preferred the Genesis over the Super Nintendo.
Okay.
Like when I would, yes, I would play the Super Nintendo at his house, and then I had the Genesis. And I just think that the games, the graphics, it was more a little. I mean, maybe because it was a later, maybe I was a little older, so I kind of like gravitated towards the graphics a little bit more. They were a little bit more realistic.
Right.
The games were a little bit older generation. Mortal Kombat had the blood,
Yeah.
so there was kind of like I don't know. It just I Streets of Rage. I mean, there's
Hmm.
that's another game that like I just latched onto, and I just feel like for me personally, I preferred playing Sonic the Hedgehog
Okay.
over the Mario, Super Mario World. I mean, as I know it's blasphemy, but like,
That's how your
even
childhood was.
today, that's just the way I grew up, and I remember the Sega Genesis was the first console that I purchased with my own money growing up when I used to work at Toys R Us. And yeah, I'm going. I think, in my opinion, I prefer the Sega Genesis.
Okay.
Now it's not a rat or bogus, so we're not throwing it
Yeah,
away.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, but
I had
I prefer it.
the opposite of David, where I had the Super Nintendo and I went to my neighbor's house to play the Sega Genesis there. And then even to put that further, the neighbor next to us there, he was the first to get Sega CD. So then we were checking
Ah,
that out at his house. So, I got to put a few hours in it. And then, I'm only limited to what games he got. So we did play, Sonic. We had X-Men, which we couldn't get very far in. So I didn't get any of the like Streets of Rage. He never rented that, so we didn't get to experience that. But going over my friend Sal's house, usually for the weekend, he had Super Nintendo. So we were playing a lot of Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, Secret of Mana,
mhm.
Final Fantasy 3, Super Metroid, Chrono Trigger, like just so many big titles that had lasting impressions on me. And I was like, I need to get these games and experience these games.
Seems like Super Nintendo had a lot more adventure games.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say so. Because if you compare, like Streets of Rage was on Sega, and we got Final Fight was kind of
Right,
close, right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were it depends on kind of who you were in that time frame, what mindset you were in, I think. Because like we had both in my house. Like I had the Super Nintendo and I had tons of games for Super Nintendo. And my sister had the Genesis. We had a few games for that, but it wasn't something that either one of us really gravitated to. I like you're saying, Russ, like there's tons of RPGs on the Super Nintendo, tons of like really great action platformers, even action adventure games that you're saying, like Legend of Zelda, the kind of the clones to that. But when I think about the Genesis, there was a lot of, I think, like fighters, yeah, action, like those platformer action ones, stuff like that. But not a ton of RPGs, if I'm thinking correctly here. Sure, there is,
With
but
Sega Genesis,
with Sega Genesis, yeah, right,
Elisa Dragoon, right? Was that one?
yeah, Like, I
Fantasy
feel like it
Star.
was yeah, I feel like it was like
There's a
David's saying,
few.
like, if you were starting to get up there and you weren't as kiddie anymore, you were starting
Yeah.
to become a young adult, and you wanted to be, cool and hip and start being an adult.
Yeah.
Genesis was gearing towards that. Well, the Super Nintendo was just putting out good games and being what it was, not trying to be that cool kid that Sega Genesis was trying to be, right? So, like, it depends on where you were, your personality at the time.
I also think with Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo had similar like the same games for each, but like let's talk about Aladdin. Aladdin was a better game on Sega Genesis in my opinion. It had the sword. You couldn't have the
Right.
sword on Super Nintendo,
Mhm.
so they
Yeah, to
catered it
throw
more
apples. Yeah.
towards
Yeah.
kids. Um and the Super Nintendo version was a lot more platforming
Mhm.
than the Sega Genesis version. And then there was another game that I was just thinking about. Oh,
Was it NHL '94? 'Cause the
NHL
NHL
94.
'94 version on the Super Nintendo is better than
No. What?
yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
What?
Oh, yeah, it is.
What?
Mortal Kombat 2 is a
Okay.
better arcade to home console
For
game
Super Nintendo.
on the Super Nintendo. It does have blood, it does have fatality.
On Super Nintendo.
It does. It's Mortal Kombat 2.
Don't you don't need a blood code on Super Nintendo?
You
I thought you needed the blood code on Super Nintendo and
you
then
might, but you can still get it.
yes, but Sega Genesis, no blood code. It just had
No, they
blood.
never needed it. Yeah.
Right. So if you were like a little older, I like
Mhm.
Keith said, I think
Yeah,
my opinion, I vote Sega Genesis.
and it's okay to be wrong sometimes. It is, David. I'm Super Nintendo guy. I'm a Nintendo guy, so I'm saying Super Nintendo.
I
But
am
I
too.
do
I mean, you see, I mean, look, I got
I am
Mario
getting
right
into
here.
Genesis games, and there's some cool ones for sure.
I mean,
Can't
what
say
is
for sure.
this? I got Mario right on my arm.
Right? And then you're flying the Sonic the Hedgehog flag.
Well,
It's a good debate.
Yeah.
Give us some topics. We'll add some controversial topics to this Wheel of Doom to keep it interesting.